This is episode 106 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Nick Cooley. Nick is a real estate investor and the co-founder of Jericho Capital. He's also a licensed agent, as am I. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. Nick, I'm excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
I'm glad to be here, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited. And we just met not that long ago at BPCon, but it's nice to get you right on here. The first thing I want to know, because I didn't find this out when we were talking in person, when was the first time you found yourself interested in real estate?
It's kind of it's a great lead question, by the way.
Thanks.
You do this often, I think.
Yeah. Well, I really like the background, because what I found, and I don't know your story yet, so it won't kill it. It's like, I've just found that it really helps listeners to find out that everybody didn't either grow up with real estate investing or even think real estate investing was anything. There's like all the spectrum. Let's hear yours.
Yeah. What a great lead. So, this is going to tie in perfectly.
Yeah. Great.
We're going to rewind back to my college days, and I played football and ran track at a university in central Nebraska. And one of the guys that I played with, he and I were moving to Denver at the same time post college. And so he got involved as an agent right out of college, and we were meeting up for this New Year's party, just kind of like reconnecting. And he was like, dude, you won't believe it, but I work with these people that they buy houses and other people pay them off. And I was like, wow, and that would have been New Year's 2014 was the first time I got exposed to that idea.
So how did you know that after the first one, when you guys are in the townhouse, how did you know this is going to be a thing? We need to do more of this.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I don't think we did after the first one. Like it required more faith maybe than like just knowing, oh, we're hooked. Let's buy 100 of these.
Right.
But it was, it's the old adage of, depending on which podcast you want to quote or book or whatever, 76% of millionaires made their money in real estate.
Right.
I've yet to see the data set for that, but like,
yeah, it's 100 people that all knew each other, and then they kicked out 24. So there were 76 investors left.
Right. And so we're like, well, let's, if nothing else, let's just stick to the plan and keep doing more of this. By the time we had bought our second place, I think it was just the following year, I had cashed out my 401k and bought our second place in 2017. Still to this day, probably the worst deal that I've ever bought. But by the time we had burned the boats to get into that second one, I think that was really what set the hook for us as far as like, we're real estate investors now.
Yeah.
And that made it like an identity thing. Like, this is what we do. We're going to do more of this. And luckily, we had started to see some of that Denver appreciation curve. And we're like, okay, if we have 10 of these, by the time we have them paid off in 20 years, we're going to be making 30 or 40 grand a month, and we'll have $10 million worth of real estate.
Yeah. So what was the mistake with the second deal? And then how did you know that you can learn from it, move past it, and then keep going to where you guys are now?
How much time do you have?
Yeah. all the time in the world. I mean, the stories about like not making the perfect decision really help other people know, like, you don't have to give up after one. You have to take as much learning.
Totally.
Let's see what you guys got.
Yeah. So we made the first mistake was we worked with an agent that wasn't an investor. It was a friend of a friend, and we like Becky, which isn't her name. We like Becky. She's nice. She'll help us out. And
she's a real estate agent, so she must understand investments, right? Now, of course, like less than 1% even have a clue about investing.
Exactly. But so that was mistake number one. And then the second mistake was probably buying based off of a lower price point and assuming that was inherently less risky. And so now, if we would have bought the $450,000 condo downtown instead of the $320,000, the $450 is worth $850, and our $320 is worth $450.
Yeah, and needed work, maybe. Yeah,
right. And like, we could afford both at that time, but it was like, well, we're still new. Let's start here. This is less risky because it's cheaper. And we quickly learned that that's not necessarily always the case.
Yeah, and would you agree? I always say this. I think all investors should get their real estate license just for access alone and plus comps. Like I really, it's not that expensive. Like if you, it's like what $1,000 a year total if you're just in one MLS. Like it's well worth it just to be able to go see every dump that comes on the market. You know, but it'd be great. There's no REOs like right now, but when REOs were out, I got licensed like 10 years ago after 25 years as an investor. And my sister said the
Mm,
first thing she's like, why didn't you do this before? We've been paying commissions for a year. I'm like, yeah. And then I realized, like you said, I knew everything. So it was much easier for me to be a real estate agent. Of course, it was easy to work with investors, but I knew more about houses because I
yeah.
looked at so many houses.
You know what's funny is my default kind of response on that historically has always been not to get a license,
Hmm.
actually.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm open to changing my mind, but traditionally, I've always said that I am in the camp of not getting your license if it's only for yourself. And
Oh, yeah.
the
Go
primary
ahead.
driver for that is you lose what all real estate investors love, which is leverage.
Hmm.
Like if you're going to do one deal a year for yourself and your motivation is to save that 2.5%, 3%, don't bother. The people like you and I that are doing 5, 6, 7, 10 deals a month that know the market so well, we're going to beat you on those deals
Yeah.
to find them and write a better offer anyway. Happily find the person that you can pay the 3% commission to or whatever it is and use their knowledge and their acumen to buy a deal at a 10% discount instead of saving the 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree with you. I think we're like saying the same thing in two parts because the way that I look at it is to me, it's a no brainer to be able, if you are an investor, then you can bring your investor friends who don't want to get licensed and get properties with them. And you're all looking together and it's fun.
Yeah.
It's like doing a live meetup all the time. And then you work with enough investors. It's like, well, I saw this property. They don't like it. Let me see who else might, because it's a decent deal. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I agree. I like just to do one deal. I've seen people, they're like, oh, well, I'm doing a flip and I want to list it. And it's like, well, that's a disaster because you don't
Yeah.
even know what you're doing as an agent. So you don't want to list your baby as the agent. Then everybody
Right.
knows you're the flipper. I do that now, but I know what I'm doing and people know me. So they know it's not like, a scam. But yeah,
Right.
I've had that where it's a baby flipper and they're the listing agent and you're like, where are the permits? They're like, what permits? I'm like, oh, this one's going to be a problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You touched on something else that's really good though too, and that like if you're somebody that's listening to real estate investing podcasts and you already feel like that tug to go into being licensed, if you can serve other investors in your market, I think that is like such a sweet spot for people that are already on the fence about being involved in real estate full time. And I coach, other newer agents now, and it is so good just to diversify your income stream as an agent. There's people that I know in the Denver market that have sold a ton of residential real estate that are losing their minds over the NAR lawsuit, that they have no idea whether or not they're going to get paid next year, and they'll
Yeah.
do 40, 50 million in transactions. Whereas us on the investor side, we're not, we're bringing value in a way that's different than just unlocking the door and asking the buyer where they want to put the Christmas tree.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as you're providing that opportunity, and I'm not saying that you have to do one or the other, but if you can do both, it gives you so much more of a runway as an agent. And the runway, the amount of time that you can spend in this business will dictate whether or not you're successful.
So what did you pivot into? Did you guys create an idea together to create Jericho? And then what happened with that?
Yeah. So at that season, we knew we were going to exit single family, go all into out of state commercial. At that time, I meet my now business partner with Jericho, Brian, and I understand relationships, raising capital, underwriting. That's really kind of my zone of genius, if you want to use that term. But I do not understand construction. That is, if you're relying on me to do that, we do not have a competitive advantage in this market. But luckily, Brian does. He comes from bidding, managing, overseeing $1 billion developments, and he understands that part in a way that I probably never will. Right. And
but also that you don't want to. It's not your skill set. So for you to have to learn that now would be a waste of your zone of genius, like you said, because you already have it. These are great points, because as you're trying to find business partners, you need to have the trust part, but you need to have skills that complement each other. Because like, great, what if nobody has, then you have to bring in a third person, and then there goes the profit. So no, these are great points. So yeah, keep going on the journey, but I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, well said. It drives me nuts when people become partners with other folks solely because they're both afraid, and we just want to be afraid together and do the same
Yeah.
thing, you know?
Where they have the exact same personality, and it's like, well, this isn't going to work out. You guys are going to
Right.
agree and disagree on everything.